Caution. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to WiseWorld Carnival!
I had a really creepy neighbor once. I actually ended up breaking my lease over how much he creeped me out. He had a bit of uncanniness about him. It was mainly his pupils. While they were round, I couldn't really say they were circular. It was almost as if they were being flexed into more of a round shape than they would naturally look without putting in effort. His eyes always straining. There were also the veins. For all the marijuana smell coming from his apartment, his beady little eyes never really had the red hue. It was always a bit more bluish. I didn't really think he actually smoked marijuana. I always had the feeling that the smell was just a cover-up for a more sinister smell. His voice was also very strange. We didn't speak much, but when we did, it almost sounded like he was multiple people at once. One time I saw him talking to some other creepily similar looking dude in the hall, and I swear his mouth didn't move at all. He always had people coming in and out of his apartment, though I definitely feel like I've seen more people enter than leave. I'm not exactly sure what they were getting up to in there, but I've always been the live and let live type, so I never really questioned them. Sometimes I wish I did. For all of his creepy features and haunting presence, nothing came to compare to the fear I felt when I went to confront him about some weird chant he was doing late into the night with his creepy friends. I always figured the guy was into occultism, and usually that wouldn't bother me, but it was now midnight and I had to get up early for work. When I left my apartment to go knock on his door, I noticed a shimmering glow coming from beneath the door. I was a bit scared, but I figured he probably just had the TV on or one of those color-changing LED strips. Then came the smell. It was a chemical smell mixed with putrid marine rot, and it grew very intense, causing my sinuses to burn. My eyes began to water profusely as I lifted my hand to knock on the door, but my arm felt too heavy, as did the rest of my body. The walls began to melt and breathe, almost as if I was tripping, and I collapsed on the floor. As I lay on the ground, the chanting grew louder and stranger. I didn't know what they were saying, but the sounds didn't sound like anything humans should be able to produce. Everything in my vision began to melt away into an inky blackness, when suddenly the chanting was accompanied by some strange piping instrument sound and the monstrous pounding of beating drums. I shrieked out in pain, as the heavy gravity faded and my very blood felt like it was starting to crystallize. I don't know how long I painfully danced that horrible eldritch symphony alone in the darkness. I went completely mad as time began to lose all meaning. The piping and drumming got so loud that I thought that the sound would tear my flesh apart. That's when I felt the demonic presence of something truly horrible beyond my comprehension looming just above my head. Suddenly, I was completely overcome with a pain that felt like every single cell in my body was crystallizing, and I felt the strangest mix of fear and nostalgia. I did not want to look up, but I had no choice. By the mercy of God, I have no recollection of what happened after this. All I remember is my head starting to turn toward the sky, then I blacked out. I woke up in my kitchen at 12:01 a.m., only about a minute after the time I got up to confront my neighbor, and there was no more chanting sound. I nervously got up and peeked out my door, not sure whether or not I should feel relieved at the lack of light and the smell coming from underneath the neighbor's door. I quit my job that day and moved back home within a week. I wish I could have forgotten that experience, but I still hear the rhythm sometimes when it's quiet. I've also been sleepwalking every now and then since that night. I set up a camera once. When I checked the footage and saw myself doing that hellish dance, I vowed that day to never record myself again. The worst reminder, however, is my new boss, who has those same weird eye thing going on. Please, you have to believe me. I can take you there if you want. I swear. It's on Route 136, a big blooming town full of lights and strange people. People who hurt to look at, like you can't fully grasp how they could be in the same plane of reality as us. Their eyes glow a sticky yellow, like a dying star in some sort of horrific disease that humanity has yet encountered. They're gaunt, gangly, dark with crooked teeth that seem to be too small and too many for their mouths. They all smile as you walk past, but not in a friendly way. More like they know how you will die and they like what they see. The town seems to go on much longer than it should. We only drove a half mile through it, but it took almost an hour. It felt like the town didn't want us to leave. The light seems like it fails the further into town you drive. Not like the sun is setting, but like the light just can't go in. Or maybe it doesn't want to. The buildings in town are the strangest of all. They look like they were made with some impenetrable black stone that absorbs all light. You can't see into any of them. The windows might as well be made of onyx. The buildings glow with a neon light that seems to fill the sky. It made my skin crawl. The lights put an image in my head that I could not comprehend. A creature made of writhing hate and filled with those same neon lights. Larger than our solar system, impatiently waiting on the edge of the universe. It's waiting for us to find it, to lead it back to us, waiting for the day its hateful lights can penetrate our world and bring us into itself. Please believe me, no one has so far. I know it sounds insane, but I swear she's still in that town. The people of the town took her from the car and turned her into one of them. I know you said you found her body, but I know that's not her. I know it's not. I saw her eyes turn that dead yellow as soon as they touched her. Her skin lost its color, not like it turned pale, but all color was gone, gray and empty, like the place that creature waits for us. And her smile, it was wrong, too big and toothy. It's not her. You have to go check that town. You'll see what I mean. I know you told me it's not there, but I know it is. I saw it, and I will never be able to forget it. That town exists. It has to. Twisting mountain roads, unpaved and unkempt, were the only way through the verdant mountains of Roanoke. Before me, the road seemed to fall into nothing as it careened down the side of Roanoke Valley. Trees would have been the only thing to stop my car should it slide over the edge, and I doubted very much that I would have ever been discovered had that been my fate, though I confess it would have been a much more humane one. It is here, my dear Ophelia, after the road careens into nothing, after the branches of the ancient trees grab at your automobile, that is where dreary Kensworth lies, preserved in an unnatural darkness cast by mountain's shadow. It was here that perfectly matched the description of the lunarium of the great Mother Hyeig's resting place. I was the only streak of modernity in this drab downtown. Windows were cracked and broken. Paint flayed off the storefronts in long streaks, and the pale townspeople, in their moth-eaten garb, milled about with a vacancy in their eyes. Eventually, the road came to a dead end, and I was awestruck with the beauty in front of me. This building, a marvel of bygone architecture, mimicked the great ruined temples of the late Etruscans, and it stood clean and white as a beacon in the middle of the dilapidated slum. While impressive, it was most certainly not the Mausoleum of our dreams. I sensed I was close to my goal, but even fetid Kinsworth seemed to be a spoiled lead. In resignation, I parked and gazed upon the temple. Beyond the marble columns that held up the delicately carved pendant, I could see nothing. I'll admit to you that I was fear-stricken, unwilling to go forward, but curiosity eventually sprung on me and freed my heels, which hence had been firmly planted in the dirt. Through the portcullis I went, feeling the cold air drift lazily out of the temple, and excitement thrummed in my chest. I knew I was at the precipice of all that we had sought. The darkness was absolute, almost abysmal in nature, that all light stopped abruptly as you entered the sacred spot. Ophelia, I can feel your comfort, a resolute satisfaction, as if I had finally come home after a long journey. As my eyes began to adjust to the darkness, a faint, ghostly image presented itself. I stopped dead in my tracks, the icy hand of fear palpitating my heart. The thing was oblong in shape and did not move. When the air returned to my lungs and I gathered my composure, I continued on. It was only when I was nearly touching it I could make out what it was. An obelisk, like of those of ancient Egypt. Running my hand across it, I felt the cold stone, my fingers catching, and what I assumed to be wondrous and intricate carvings. I went to pull away, but some unseen force seemed to keep my hand glued to the obelisk, and I felt the world violently shift around me. My head spun, and my body felt light. I thought I might faint. Squeezing my eyes shut, I almost let out a ghastly scream, but everything settled as quickly as it had begun. Opening my eyes, I found myself in a bright room. The obelisk was gone, but I could still feel its coldness in front of me. The temple was filled with lit sconces, and tapestries woven in bright purple and gold threads hung from the tops of the columns holding up the monumental structure. Turning around, I exited the temple to see that Kinsworth I had arrived in was no more. The stores were painted in magnificent bright colors. Silver street lamps jutted out of the crack-free sidewalks and gleamed in the midday sun. The Kinsworth people strutted down the walk, greeting each other and giving off carefree smiles. A gentleman in a pinstripe suit gave me a small bow as I moved past him. I was utterly confused. I looked up, and shock once again rocked my foggy mind. There, towering above the town and nested high between the mountains, was the imposing mausoleum. Its white marble face was just as I had remembered it, just as we had described to each other from our dreams. I started to walk, calmly at first, but then excitement overcame me as I broke into a sprint. My car was just where I had left it on the street corner, and I reached out to open the door. It was only a few minutes' drive. And I would learn just what it was that was so special, so haunting about this place. Before I could even wrap my fingers around the handle, a rough hand ensnared my arm and yanked me away from the car. It spun me around, the grip tightening. A square-faced man smiled down at me, his green eyes wide and filled with indignation. "Let go of me, sir, please," I insisted. He did not budge, and I heard a chorus of heels on the pavement. Turning my head to either side, I was alarmed to see that hundreds of people were now surrounding us, men, women, and children alike. Each of their faces was twisted into a hideous smile, and as the man spoke, so did they. "Claire." I stopped, struggling in surprise. How could they know my name? The sound of their voices was deafening.
"We want to get to know you."
"Let go of me!" I screamed. With all the force I could muster, I brought my leg up into the man's groin. He didn't flinch. Instead, his smile widened, and he grabbed my face. He turned my head up into the sky, and I stared in horror as a great something oozed out of the gaping mouth of the mausoleum. An inky, viscous substance flowed out from the mausoleum's maw, tearing through the dense trees, ripping them out of the ground at the root, and thundering toward us. I screamed and thrashed against my captor as the other townspeople bowed down toward our intimate doom, their hands cupped in front of them as if begging for water. In an instant, the colligious tidal wave was upon us, nearly snapping my neck as I was wrenched under the dark wave. It was cold, thick. I can feel it seeping into my pores, down my throat and nose, invading my very being. 2.5 decades of memories, my hopes and dreams, and my thoughts streamed out of me in a violent torrent until I was nothing but an empty husk. All I was laid bare in the darkness until my very essence was absorbed into the abyss. At first, it was blissful to lay back and be nothing, to float aimlessly in the void with my head empty. Then I woke up, strained with cold sweat on the dark, cold floor of the temple. The sun had started to set, and without hesitation, I sprinted out of that accursed Acropolis and into my car. This time, as I passed each townsperson endlessly mulling about, they all turned and looked at me, a knowing smile playing upon their pallid lips, and disgusting satisfaction in their graying eyes. I sped home without stopping, and had refused to leave since. When I am awake, my mind begins to wander. That's when the fear sets in. It wraps my bowels and pounds away inside my chest, and sleep is the only thing that makes it go away. For when I close my eyes, I see the invading oblivion of the mausoleum, and its cold presence soothes my fettered heart. Ophelia, you must not come for me, but above all else, you must burn everything we had about Kensworth. Every map, every dream journal, every stray thought must be destroyed. As each day goes by, my thoughts drag in a wrap, focusing only on one sole command: to bring others to the mausoleum. For what purpose, I do not, or rather am not allowed to know. But soon, this will be all that I am, and all that I ever was. Memories of my childhood and my parents are fading by the hour, and soon will be completely lost. I am scared, and I wish more than anything to hear your reassurance that it will be all right. Yours always, Claire.